January 17th, in just a few days, we'll have a new president, we'll have a new session underway, and to celebrate the start of the session, we have Speaker Schultz with us here today. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you, Heidi. Maura, it's an honor to be with you.
Yes.
El Jefe is in the house.
El Jefe.
Yeah, he's a big deal.
Maura Carabello, you're a big deal too, so. Yes, so I'm glad we're here, and I know you're very busy coming up. You said you were trying to have a day off to work on the ranch, and there's just been no time for it.
It didn't happen. I spent all day on the phone, and that was supposed to be yesterday, but I spent all day on the phone, but we're in that time of year, so it's okay.
Do you ever just do you have the AirPods in and you can just go and like throw some hay and
when AirPods were invented,
yeah.
I call them AirPods, I guess they're earpods, but
they are? I don't know what they are.
When AirPods were invented, I was like, these are amazing. I can actually work and talk on the phone at the same time. The problem is, I can't concentrate and work and talk on the phone at the same time. I need to learn how to multitask, so that's my next goal.
It is tricky.
It's in your ears, it's harder?
If I'm doing something just kind of that I know what I'm doing, I know how I'm doing it, and if I'm talking about a subject that I just know about, then I can. But if I have to think, then I can't work with my hands and do it at the same time because I'm busy thinking and my hands, it just doesn't work.
It makes sense.
I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm working on it. One of these days I'll figure it out.
I like to think I can multitask. I know we can't. Every time you do it, you just mess something up. So,
yeah. It's not true.
Well, we are excited for the session to start. Just a quick headline. If you have tickets to the inauguration, good luck because now it's inside.
Toasty warm.
Yeah.
And you won't be in there.
And you won't be in there. So it'll be interesting watching this. And the last time this has happened, I think, was 1985 with President Reagan. So
did Reagan move it indoors, or I thought it was just cold?
I think it was cold, and they moved it indoors because it was 9 degrees. And I think that's what the overnight low will be on the inauguration day. So if you're in line, it might be early in the day, 9 degrees, but it's going to warm up to 20, and there's snow.
Monday is Martin Luther King Day, inauguration, and football national championships, college football.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't pay attention to football.
I'm with you, Heidi.
Go Notre Dame.
Go Notre Dame. I need to keep up on this. I was just asking the other day if Taylor Swift was still in it for the Super Bowl as well, because I don't follow. So I heard she is. So
her boyfriend plays earlier that day on Saturday.
Oh, he does? Okay,
the
good.
Chiefs are going for a 3-peat.
Okay. I'm just not into football, so you're going to have to tell us how that's going. That surprises me about you. You're just not a sports kind of guy, or what's your sport?
I rodeo. That's my sport. I love the outdoors. I love motors, things with motors, racing, NASCAR.
You like to build stadiums?
I do like to build stadiums, rodeo stadiums. But anyways, it's, I'm more...
He's an individual sports enthusiast.
I just, anyway.
I feel you there. Hey,
loves golf.
Loves golf.
I hate golf.
That's like the gentleman's sport where you get business done before you head to the legislative session, so that's not going to happen.
It's so unproductive. So
I feel you. I just don't like that you have to be quiet. I'm not going to participate in that. Before we get into some of the big things happening, Tik Tok Ban, Maura, is this going to happen, or are we going to let people continue with their multi-million-dollar salaries?
Supreme Court says let it happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be super interesting. Trump has been interesting on this because he sort of, in many ways, started this notion, and then he abandoned it and said no, and now cross-party lines, but led by the Republicans, is this, I'm not so sure that this is secure. Now you see Trump saying, well, I don't know, it may go on. So it looks like the Supreme Court has at least cleared the way for the unplugging of TikTok.
Yeah, I think it gets unplugged. I think it needs to get unplugged. Look, this is a national security issue. The amount of information that China is gathering through social media and through TikTok is scary. To be honest with you, I think it's a little bit scary, the information they're gathering on all of us through social media. However, put that in the hands of China, that becomes a big problem.
I mean, in fairness, research doesn't play that fear out. It sort of shows that they have a management structure that, frankly, hundreds of Chinese-owned American companies have. But, the powers that be have planted their sword on this, so we're going to keep it going. But it'll be so fascinating if Donald Trump is who's championing TikTok and the Republicans in the House and Senate are who are saying, no, it's a national security threat.
I think there's concern over it being a national security threat, but when there's so many people who that's how they make their, millions on it, or they're addicted to it.
A lot of small businesses.
Yeah, so that's the problem. So if it dies, I'm going to start something called Pickpock. Join it. It's going to be awesome.
That's the thing, right? Do we go with something that's popular or that we know is unsafe, or because it's so popular, or do we take a stand and say, no, that I'm sorry, it's unpopular, it's a tough decision, it's unpopular, we understand that, but really in our national security interest, we need to come up with something better.
Tough parenting here from the Schultz house.
Tough parenting. Sometimes you got to make tough decisions.
All right.
And this needs to happen. It needs to be. I was hoping that it would get sold, but
I'm surprised nobody bought it.
Well, there's people out there who buy it. China's dug their heels in and hasn't sold it. They're playing, I think, a political game. But
interesting. All right. Well, I always learned with parenting that if you threatened, you had to follow through or they won't take you seriously. So
exactly.
They've got to pull the plug at this point. Hey, the Supreme Court, they have been busy. They denied Utah's case to control public lands. At this point, the question is, will it get kicked down to some lower courts and actually work its way through the process, or is it dead? I feel like you're dying. You're dying.
I better start on this one, but I need the last word on
like
this.
Speaker Schultz.
Okay.
Look, this is a really important issue to Utah, and let me just kind of frame why. So years ago, the Washington, D.C., we'll call it, started putting all sorts of policies onto our public lands. And some of those years ago were probably necessary, okay, because there were overgrazing that was happening. There were certain things that needed to be changed. And so the first part of that was good. The problem is, just like Washington, D.C., every time it goes too far. And so then it went into, let's work to eliminate grazing completely. Well, if you know anything about land management, you know that is a bad thing. It's actually good to have animals on the grounds grazing. Buffalo, think of buffalo, right? We used to have buffalo here that grazed it. Cattle has taken that over.
Pioneer children sang as they walked and picked up buffalo chips. Is that how the song goes?
I think you exaggerated a little bit,
Okay,
but
good.
something along those lines. But look, there's important management practices that need to be had that is not happening on our federal lands today, and it is a huge problem. So it started out with grazing years ago, went into the drilling of oil and whatever, and you know, those things are all somewhat controversial. I can understand someone's perspective that may be against that. I would have a different perspective, but here's where they have went too far recently. This is why you've seen the state take action. They have taken a hands-off, don't-touch approach. And when I say they, Washington, D.C. bureaucrats that are coming in trying to control Utah are saying, no more, we're closing it all down. Well, Utah is a public lands state. We are public lands. It's what makes Utah unique, and it's what makes Utah special. And when you start shutting down our public lands, we're going to stand up and say, no, we're not going to allow you to shut it down. By example, they shut down over 500 miles of road around the Moab area earlier this year. Over 500 miles of road. And then just recently, last week, they shut down 665 miles of roads in the San Rafael swell area. When you close those roads off, you are eliminating access for the vast majority of Utahns. That is a problem. That's where we're coming in and say, not only are you managing this property, these lands poorly, but now you're closing off access. You're not allowing Utahns on it. We're going to do something. So we filed a petition. We went directly to the Supreme Court. Look, we were not naive to think that the chances of the Supreme Court picking that up directly were pretty slim, but we felt like, you know what, let's take a shot and see if we can do it. We're going to continue forward. Now we have to go through the normal process through federal district court. You'll see that come up early to late spring, I think. We're going to continue forward with that litigation.
I think Maura actually has the key to those lands. She locked them off herself. She was down there.
That's what environmentalists do.
Who aren't watching on YouTube, I leaned away from my mic and I relaxed. And I let
first time ever.
I would just like that point.
You were very relaxed looking. I was like, wow, so chill, Maura. Happy New Year.
Can I just say why for a minute?
Please.
Because she gets so much criticism because she just jumps in right over the top and controls it, and then I don't get to say anything. And because she's a female, I have to let her. I can't jump back and talk back.
Sexism is always a really good counter.
I'm just making stuff up.
I'm going to start my story the way Mike started his story. Years and years ago, the people who occupied the territory of Utah were violating the Utah state, or the United States Constitution. And the United States of America owned all the property. And finally they came to an agreement in which they said, yes, we will become a state of Utah, and we will support ourselves to the federal government, and we will acknowledge that the federal government owns this lands, And when we drew this cute little map that's not quite a rectangle, we said no problemo. We said that would be fine with us. And now we're mad. Now we're mad and we're whining that the federal government, quote, owns our land, when in fact they gave us the great state of Utah. So this is not in violation of anything. Now, where Mike and I agree, since I'm apparently in agreeable mood, where we agree is there is this tension when you have so much federal land being controlled by a government that's not your local government, there's tension. Now, when Mike says we, so his golden years of trash talking the Biden administration are over.
I know.
So now the feds are going to come in, they're going to be as bureaucratic and heavy-handed as ever, but he can't trash talk Doug Berman, so he's going to have to figure out how that part works. But yes, there have been some incidences where we need to punch above our weight. We need to fight a little harder for management in a way that reconciles the local point of view. So I agree with Mike about the thinness of maintenance and the thinness. Now, where he and I disagree is use and distribution of use.
Yeah.
We both agree that these lands should be used. We define them entirely differently. But the one flaw in the Republican whiny saga is that somehow the feds took over our land when in fact it was theirs to start. And we're the ones who have a state around it. And we're just whiny. The Republicans, to their credit, being in a super majority, they don't like when people disagree with them. So, I mean, you're going to see a massive swing. What they're looking forward to is a reconsideration of our national monuments and how much that is. And then Mike will be in the perfect position, as he said, to continue the legal action, which, to his credit, was a bold legal action. If I don't agree with his strategy, but I loved that Utah went and punched to the Supreme Court level. I'm glad it failed, but I liked the strategy. But again, I think we would be better off providing specific solutions, going to our federal delegation as well as the administration in these lands, and do better just petitioning resources. I do think that Republicans in the House and Senate are onto one thing, which is if Utah can persuade the federal government to reapportion a share of tax dollars for use, that is kind of a clever strategy. The problem will be that Mike will be in charge of use, and I don't agree with that.
We like spending it on our kids. Anyways, so let me just hit on a couple. I don't want to get into the legal weeds, but we have the same enabling act as so many other states east of the Mississippi that says Congress has to dispose of those lands. That's the problem. They haven't disposed of lands. You can talk about how you dispose of lands. We want the state of Utah to own those lands, but
that's a very narrow point of view.
I don't disagree.
You're taking a large canon of law, and you've just read us one line. That will be the only argumentative point I will make. It is an incomplete picture.
How about common law marriage? Like, it's been our land for long enough. Like, we're hooked. Let us do what we want with it.
Here's the thing. The good part is, well, not the good part necessarily. The good part for you is if you believe that strongly, then you have nothing to worry about, that Utah's not going to get those lands back.
Amen.
I think that it's more nuanced, and I know it's more nuanced than what I'm saying.
Your super conservative, celebratory Supreme Court was like, meh.
That doesn't mean they're not good. That doesn't mean that we're going to lose on this.
Oh,
but
yeah, they're going to look forward to taking it through the district courts because I think the Supreme Court supports themselves to that.
There were thousands and thousands of petitions.
And this one didn't rise to the occasion.
Speaking of rising to the occasion.
Time out. I got something I got to say.
Okay, Schultz has something to say.
I'm going to tip my hand here just a little bit. Look, if Utah could play a larger role in managing these lands, we wouldn't be here. We care about these lands. We love these lands. We want to wrap our arms around these lands and take care of them and protect them. The problem is, and that's what's so frustrating, is the federal government's policies is ruining these lands, and it's ruining people's access to these lands. And you look at some of the reasons why California is going through what it went through right now, and it's because poor management of those lands. Utah's seen similar experiences with some of our large fires, and so the idea is, I mean, if
when we have a large fire, that's due to bad management.
Some of it is, yes. Some of it,
when Utah has
the size of it and the extreme heat of it, and all that.
So the reason that San Rafael Swell has a couple of hundreds of roads closed is the same reason that there's a fire in LA?
No,
And
that's
I'm
not
like
what I'm
supposed to
saying.
sit quietly by and go,
I said there's two
I see.
problems.
Mara,
Management,
rake
which
the
is different than
forest.
closing off access. So there's two different issues. Management is one of them. Closing off access, you can't conflate the
but
two.
you could work with the federal government on land
That's the
management.
problem. We would love to.
Nothing.
We did with the Trump administration. We actually
Right, and
signed
you
a
guys
shared
just,
stewardship
you guys just
amendment.
ran the board.
No.
So the next 4 years
Yeah.
should be your playground.
But then the problem is, we had a signed stewardship management agreement with the Trump administration, and the problem is the Biden administration came in and canceled it off.
I don't know
And
if
then the
anyone's told you this,
environmentalists took over.
Trump's
and-
back. So like Trump is
The
back,
brand new
you're in
edition.
the House, you're in the Senate.
Yeah. Yeah,
What's
we're-
the complaint about?
So
Why don't you just run the
we're
board?
we are going to play that strategy as well. So, and this time we learned, and we're going to try to make it permanent. And so, there's a multi-pronged strategy coming so that Utah can get back to managing Utah's lands for the citizens of the state. That's our number one goal.
And the federal lands, because remember, they're not our lands, they belong to the federal government.
They're inside our boundaries. I understand that they belong to the federal government, but it's Utahns historically that have cared for and protected those lands. That's Utah lands.
That's not how law works, though. I hear you. I love the conviction behind it, but that's actually not how the law works.
Speaking of the law, the Supreme Court decided they would not take Governor Cox out of office. Lyman's case was denied. Whether he goes down to the lower courts again, we don't know. Stay tuned for that. I want to talk about the legislative session, and Kira Birkeland stepped down right before the session started. Her seat was filled in a special election. Tiara Auxier, is that how you say your name?
Yes.
Okay. Auxier
Yep.
will be taking her place. So she is doing some serious, probably reading up and getting ready for that. So that's like a quick turnaround going there. I want to get to you, but you've been talking too much. So Maura gets a turn for a second.
Okay, I'll
So
shut
priorities. We know you have a list of priorities. When you've seen the list of priorities, do you agree with him on some of these priorities, or are you like, we've got to throw a couple of these out?
I believe education matters. Is that so? Maybe
That's good.
We probably agree on the topic list, just none of the approaches.
None of the
to it.
approaches.
Here's what
We agree on the outcomes.
So
I would
here's
say.
what I see so far that I like.
Okay.
There does not seem to be as many cultural wars. No one has broadly broadcast a strategy that we've had for the last 3 or 4 sessions in which we're going to dispatch with some cultural war issues in the first week and then claim it didn't take too much of our time. So there doesn't seem to be any of that. It
There
seems
might
to
be a trans bill coming through if that's what you're talking
just
about, though.
given.
Yeah.
That's a given in there with, and we'll talk about that
Okay.
in state. But there does not seem to be the hype around that. They seem to be laser focused. I'm going to talk about it as though he's not here.
Okay.
They seem to be laser focused on energy, which I think is a nonpartisan issue, and it's really about digging into the policy. And we have the gift of being a growing state, and we have the gift of being a tech hub, and those two things require laser focus on energy. Energy is really interesting because unlike others, it developed so fast. I mean,
Yeah.
we were ready, we are ready, but the demand was not foreseeable. So Utah's doing a good job with their long list, but also there's some urgency. And then, Speaker Schultz has really emphasized his point of view on particularly higher education and the need to cut some there. He and I don't disagree actually about the need to perhaps look at cutting. We disagree on how, and we disagree on the reach of
She
the
doesn't want you
legislature.
involved, Mr. Schultz.
Yeah.
There's a chance I think someone else has a better expertise in education than the legislature.
Can
I know
I
that's
talk yet?
shocking.
Yeah, so let's dig into
okay.
these topics. Do you want to start
Higher
with
ed.
energy or higher ed or energy? Where do you want to start?
Let's hit on energy really quick and then move to higher ed if you're okay.
I think
with
we agree on energy.
that. Well, so this is, and I appreciate that. And you and I have had conversations last year around energy, and you actually bucked a little bit your party a little bit last year and said
With my party?
Yeah, because your party and others really criticized
Republicans?
really criticized the Democrat Party, really criticized our positions last year on energy. So because we did take a stand last year, we were first out in the nation. We led the nation to the point to where we had almost every energy expert pointing at what Utah did with our legislation last year, saying this model legislation, other states need to do it. Because of that, we had people
You're
like
talking about taking
X96.
over IPP.
No.
You're talking about your battle with Rocky Mountain Power. What are you talking
We're
about?
talking about protecting our power generation facilities and not shutting them down, and we needed
talking
all
about
the above
coal.
energy, coal included in there, but all of the above. All of the above, we need all of the above. That's where we are.
All the eggs in the basket.
All the eggs. Option number D, check the box, all the above is what we need here in the state of Utah. In that process, we had stations like X96 nominate me for Boner of the Day because of that.
You were
I'm
a
so
boner?
mad. I lost.
lost.
I took second on that, and I
We
was
were
so
Sorry.
upset.
Who was the bigger
I
boner?
don't remember, but I
You
felt
had
like I needed
45
to win
days
that.
to get a victory on that, I say.
Salt Lake Tribune was drawing funny cartoons, but and if that's the price we have to pay to stand up and say no, this pathway that the federal government and Rocky Mountain Power was taking us on was wrong because the energy we need, we need more energy, not less energy. I'm grateful that it's now a bipartisan issue. I saw that the Democrats had energy as one of their top priorities as well. I'm grateful that hopefully we can work together collaboratively to make sure that we secure Utah as having the lowest energy rates in the nation and keeping it that way and having all the above strategy.
So here's what I'm looking for. I think that wind and solar particularly, has had some support, including with members of the House and Senate. And so when we say all of the above, I think we need to not atrophy on the wind and solar. But what people in the industry really do know is it's not 360, 24/7. And so when you look at energy, what's changing is what Mike has said, is it's a portfolio. And it's about having the portfolio. I would be more aggressive about exchanging the portfolio to clean because of our air quality, probably quicker than Mike would. But I do agree with him that the Biden strategy of just virtue signaling an amount that did not correlate with the reality isn't the way to do policy. And what we have that's really coming to the forefront, we've had 2 or 3 agencies, namely UAMPS, who looked at small cell reactor nuclear. So nuclear isn't nuclear, but small cell reactor, good stuff. Really low emissions, really good for our air quality, and manageable from a waste perspective. I don't want us to go too far too fast. Also, Utah would lead the nation in the regulatory track you have to go through with the federal government. So it will require really working with state leaders to just make sure we're making it through, because it is a first of technology to bring to scale. The other one that Utah might be able to do well is geothermal. And so I don't like, sometimes some Republicans I feel like are being kind of cute and semantic about all of the above in their attacking Rocky Mountain Power and wanting to keep coal. But I agree with the slow taper of coal, but I think that where the truth is in the long-term portfolio is really going to be nuclear and geothermal when you look at our air quality problems, and we love them because they're durable, right? They're 24/7, 360. They're not affordable right now, but that's just because they haven't come to market.
Yep, Maura's right on the geothermal. Again, we're leading the nation here in Utah on geothermal, which is awesome and amazing. And
Is that happening in Beaver or
in
where?
Beaver County right now. Yeah, it's unbelievable what's happening out there actually. So, it's good to hear, and I'm grateful that we're starting to coalesce around it as we need to do something. I want to just give Rocky Mountain Power a shout out because they have been extremely collaborative. It took a minute to get there, but they have been extremely collaborative, and we're in a good spot.
The other thing is we listen to energy. Transmission and production are not the same thing. And we need to learn to speak. I need to learn to speak more specifically. Energy is too broad of a topic to just pretend energy is energy.
Yeah.
So, and portfolio is different and market price is different, but we do have a transmission problem. And a lot of what the state, from my vantage point, pushed back on was actually more of an issue of transmission and insurance. And we do have to figure out, and what's cool, and there are a couple of Republican representatives who will bring forth bills that are really focused on utilizing transmission that we already have. So we're not at our peak efficiency. So the first step we should do is just peak up our already existing lines.
Maura's 100% right. We have a transmission problem here in the state of Utah. I'm going to come back. Do you know why we have a transmission problem here in the state of Utah?
No,
Poor management by the Republicans? I don't know. It was a guess. It was a guess.
Because we can't get the permits to add additional lines to the power poles or put bigger power poles in to add additional.
Who gives permission?
The federal government across the federal.
But Mike, as I just said, we haven't optimized. You have not done your part. So So I look forward to you voting for those bills to optimize the existing transmission
If I was
lines.
in Washington DC, it would be done already,
Yeah,
but
but
I'm
this
not.
is
So
going to be on your desk. This is about to be on your desk next
we
week.
are, we have been doing all that we could. and
Except
doing everything.
optimizing the transmission lines.
That's the problem. See, we can't because the federal government's in control, and I'm sitting here in
But you
Utah. But
can't.
if we had control of that
No, you
land here in
still have
Utah,
the ability
then we
to
could.
optimize. It's not all them. I mean, like, I get it, they're bad, but like, you do have some control over this.
Not necessarily. We do have some control, I agree, but to expand and build more transmission lines or to add additional lines on the power poles, or
Yes.
that's
To grow, but we
to grow.
can still
Yes,
optimize.
I agree. We can optimize, but we need to grow. That's the problem. We can't optimize our way out of the problem. We have to add additional lines. Okay, education.
All right. So Maura, when you were not here, discussed the fact that she didn't feel like you were qualified to decide if we were
Oh, yeah, last week?
cutting
Yeah.
basket weaving classes or what. So higher
She's criticizing me
education.
because I didn't go to.
No, not even.
I don't even. I was making that quote up.
You were not, you need to tell people what the goal is.
Yeah.
Good
That's fair.
public policy is
That's
to
fair.
tell people what you want from them and then let area experts make the choices.
Yeah. So
So who's going to make decisions? Because
Yeah.
universities, I think everyone can look at them and see that the cost is insane right now. There probably needs to be something done so it stays something that we can send our kids to college, they can afford, and they're not buried in debt. So how do we fix it?
yeah, so perfect, and I agree. We agree on this. If I'm in there trying to tell our universities how what classes to teach, how to teach them, that we're missing the point. That's not the point of the legislature. The legislature's goal and needs to set the broad policies, and then turn it over to the Board of Higher Education to get those policies implemented. And so that's what we're working well with right now. I will say almost every university in the state of Utah is working really well with this right now and with the Board of Higher Education to get this right. That's what really excites me the most. To be honest, when we started down this path, it wasn't quite that way. We were working really well with the Board of Higher Education. They saw and agreed with where we were headed. It took several months, 6 months or so, maybe a little bit longer, to get all the university presidents on board. But when they realized they didn't really have an option, they came on board. And
That usually
This is the definition of working together in the Utah way.
That's the way it needs to be. Let me tell you what.
Minority is finally beaten into submission, then the majority says, you know what's so good to
But
get
see,
along.
here's the
So
problem.
nice that we're at the same
Here's
table.
why this is important, and this is the role of the legislature. We are in charge of the budget. We have increased higher education funding in the state of Utah, doubled it over the last 10 years. Doubled over the last 10 years.
It's a lot of money.
We have not went back and looked at how they are using those dollars. As we started to go back and look at how they were using the dollars that we gave them, they were completely out of line as what's best for the students. They grew faculty. Administrative costs at some universities went up 143% over the last 9 years. I'm going to use so that was the worst example, 143% over the last 9 years. The best example was Southern Utah University in Cedar City. They only grew by 20% administrative cost on a per student basis over the last 20 years. That's great efficient use of the money. So we're going in, we're looking at administrative costs, we're looking at the programs that were created. In many cases, you have 5, 6, 7 universities teaching the same programs and only graduating 1 or 2 students out of each one of those
What happened to set the
programs.
broader policy?
Hold on. So we're saying you don't need to waste all that money at 6 universities teaching the same program that's only producing 1 or 2 graduates a
Name
year.
the program, what is
Collapse it. Still offer those programs. French Studies was one of the examples given. So French Studies, I think 4 or 5 universities teach it, 14 graduates total. In total, all combined between 4 or 5 universities that teach those programs. I'm sorry, let's teach French Studies at one university. With technology today, everybody can have access, and we can still do it, and then we can collapse that money. And let me tell you one of the great things that I think needs to be expanded that we're doing with higher ed. Weber State University, #1 in the nation, concurrent enrollment. For those that don't know what concurrent enrollment is, that's where you can take college classes and get college credits in high school. Utah, Weber State #1. UVU, #2 in the nation for concurrent enrollment. These are amazing things. We're already educating our kids at a faster pace than the rest of the nation because of the concurrent enrollment programs. We need to grow these types of programs to move our kids through the process faster. Higher education cost and tuition is through the roof all across the nation. We have an opportunity to stop the growth or lower the cost here in the state of Utah for our kids and for our families. That's where we're focused on. That's what our goals are, and then moving kids through the process faster.
Did he sell you and get you to the table?
This is not the first time we've had this discussion. So first I want to take a cheap shot, because that will make me feel better. And I hope you bring that same level of voracious scrutiny to your voucher program, because it has 2 or 3 vaguely written marks, no names and phone numbers, and the distribution of that first tranche was without oversight.
Yeah.
So if you are voracious about oversight, I would like to see some continuity
We agree.
throughout. And then
The cheap shot was accepted. We agree.
Thank you. I will say, I have deeply appreciated where this conversation has gone from 3 months ago to where it is now. I have seen a language change and a focus and less threats, less sort of come out hot from our legislators. I hope we learn and maybe don't come out hot on all the issues we get worked up about, because I do think when you can listen beyond sort of some of the hot stuff, we agree. We should belt tighten. We should look at, Utah has had a history. I don't know if y'all remember in probably mid-90s, late 90s, when all those small schools wanted to be universities, right? Mm-hmm. And we had a long conversation about, to again Mike's point, do you only need universities? Wait a minute, do we need colleges? Wait a minute, do we need tech centers?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. So if we can get earnest, but it's really hard to come to the table when people in control start out hot. And so if we can come to the table saying, hey, listen, I am not attacking you, and as someone who will deeply and passionately continue to defend underwater basket weaving degrees, because we frankly rule the world. I am proud
If you
of
can
my
hold your
underwater
breath,
basket
yes.
degrees. I am the one that is going to be able to go underwater, weave a basket, and float you fools up who didn't get an underwater basket degree. Like, it is good stuff.
Yeah.
Being able to critically think is so much more important into the future. I love that we're in a whole new world. We have online learning. We need to look at how many research universities we have. We need to look at how many technical colleges. And so I want to just give a round of applause for what I see as a more productive dialogue in bringing people to the table. But I hope we could start the process less hot and maybe just get to that point quicker. That was like, I wasn't intended to be backhanded.
Well,
I
it
think
takes
it
two.
appears as
It
though-
takes two. So when,
Yes, but you
when
guys
the-
just aren't used to being anything but dictatorial. So
Well,
you're
that's-
like, when you snap your fingers
But-
and point to us and tell us to
just-
sit down, and then you're like, why are you flicking an attitude?
I just
and I'm like,
wanna-
you just snapped at me.
That's because-
Like, it's all about the how, Mike, you know
So
that.
when we're hearing
Right.
that Salt Lake City was invited by the state to come up with a homeless plan, were they invited or were they
She
told
totally
to?
bought into it. She and Mike
Or
are
it was
saying
like,
the same
get
too.
this damn
The mayor
plan
stands
done.
up this morning and she's like, I just like to see that as an invitation. I'm like, wow, you and I are different.
Listen here. When
Talk
come back
sexy to us.
Education.
Talk about
I'm
the
giving you an
education.
attaboy. I'm saying I
I
think
know.
it's productive right now.
But here's the problem. When we go to them and they say, oh, everything's fine, we don't need to, that becomes a problem. Look at how many professors wrote op-eds about me or others in the legislature.
Because you were trash talking them. Those were underwater
Because we were
basket weaving professors, and you were trash talking them.
'Cause we were
and
saying
we were
we need-
offended by the trash talking.
Well, but my point is, we tried to get in and try to solve the problems, and all we have to say is, everything's fine, don't look here,
You
nothing to
said
do.
you guys suck.
Yes.
I need a 10 to 20% across the board. That was your first shot across the bow.
That, publicly, but not privately behind the scenes.
Oh, well, if it was
But-
a gentle public nudging, I'm just saying
Well,
we're
no.
in a productive
So
place.
when we
This is
try,
like a Nancy
they don't-
Pelosi with
But I
Biden
wanna
being
say-
like,
I
right
want to
out
say,
of
the
the
Board
race.
of Higher Ed has always been, they have been on board with us, the Board of Higher Ed. The problem is getting the universities on board, which they're on board. We're great. We're in a good position. Things are moving forward.
Unless you're a French
Salt Lake
teacher.
City, public safety.
Okay.
You wanted to go there. Sorry.
I know. We have so much to talk about, but we're limited on time.
We've got
so,
a few more minutes.
So,
more than Jackson says.
do you want to talk K through 12? Do you want to talk about the mayor coming up with a homeless plan, or do you want to talk election reform?
Let's go home. Or sorry, I think probably to your constituents and to the people listening, probably public safety.
Okay.
What do you think?
Let's talk public safety.
safety.
Sure, I love public safety.
Okay.
I don't want to be raped, killed, murdered, run over by a car. None of it.
I know.
Yeah.
I agree.
So what are you going to do about it?
So really, the public safety component is surrounded around Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County, and the unlawfulness that's happening in the streets. And it's fair. There were several of us inside the legislature and all across the state, and more specifically the business community and the citizens that live inside Salt Lake, that have said enough's enough. And so the state, we started to take a really strong approach with Salt Lake City. And to Mayor Mendenhall's credit, she saw that coming. We had a conversation. We said we would rather work together collaboratively to solve the problem, because that's where I think it should be, right? Public safety is local government's #1 responsibility. But for whatever reason, when they fail to do that, the state needs to step in to help out and to force their hand. And it's not all Salt Lake City. There's some issues inside the judiciary. There's a lot of issues inside Salt Lake County with prosecutors, Sim Gill's office, courts, judges, jail capacity, a lot of things that are outside of Salt Lake City's control. So this isn't all at the feet of Salt Lake City's and Mayor Mendenhall and the feet. However, we've got to find a way to come together to solve these problems. And myself, as Speaker of the House, President Adams, and Governor Cox are working and leading together with Mayor Mendenhall and county leaders to help resolve this issue. And you know, the plan is just being developed. Mayor Mendenhall has just rolled out her plan. We're in the process of looking at it to see if we agree completely with it and where we're going to change and how we move forward.
I'm a Salt Lake City resident. I care about public safety. And I generally, as a disposition, like to trash talk the state and the state legislature. But I really appreciate the approach that the Speaker and the President and the Governor took towards changing this. For whatever reason, and I'm not, again, even laying this all at City Hall, for whatever reason, we weren't getting it done on our own. We continued to give a lot of lip service. This is a mayor who's in her 5th year, not her 1st year. And it wasn't getting done and wasn't getting done. And so while you will often see me object to what I see as heavy-handedness about the capital city, I do not think that's fair in this instance. I do not think they were heavy-handed. I think that they had a requirement to do something. I do think that the capital city, and who is the seat of the capital, and the government, there is this relationship right now between, and this is such a chronic problem, and Salt Lake City has so fundamentally failed to focus on this chronic problem for 6 years. We are often met with whines and reasons why, which is fundamentally not leadership. My problem with you explaining why you can't get something done as an elected official is your job is to figure it out. That's the only thing I need you to do, is to figure it out. Erin Mendenhall today gave a great speech. She was really open, she was gracious, she pointed out what we're hearing today from Mike, which is they seem to have had really productive relationships. She's also come to the table and take responsibility. I sort of very much reflect what the governor said yesterday in his press conference, though. He said the same thing. He said, like, this is really productive. I feel really good about it. But I would say to anybody what the governor said, your proposal is only as good as the paper it is written on. So there's this old adage in politics that says, I can't hear what you say because I'm too busy looking at what you're doing. And we have failed at this population. And credit should be given to the new homeless services board, I don't name number 12. They are pushing.
Yes.
They're being driven
Randy
by data,
Shumway,
not
Clark
partisanship.
Ivory, yes.
They're demanding results. They got the ball rolling on having all of our elected officials stay demanding on results. But here's the deal. I am so frustrated because this problem is proportional. If you live in LA, bless you. I don't know what you're going to do with your homeless population. the state of Utah has a manageable problem.
We can
And
still fix it.
So that means we're just not getting it done. We're not getting serious. The one thing I will say is, in a quick read of Salt Lake City's proposal, of which should be given lots of room to be successful, I didn't see anything new. It felt like they maybe just aggregated the list of problems and the list of solutions.
They asked AI what they could do about the problem.
I'm wanting to see, so it's comprehensive, having a list gets you started. I would love to have seen, you've got a strong Democratic mayor in the county, you have a strong Democratic sheriff in the county. I wish that they had taken those 30 days to bring to Speaker Schultz some already done negotiation between a Democratic sheriff and a Democratic mayor and another Democratic mayor. So
Don't forget to leave out Sim Gill in that, because he's probably bigger problem than Salt Lake City. But
he's
yeah.
not a problem. I'm
Oh,
a
no,
Sim Gill
he's a
fan.
problem.
But none, I mean, jails are really part of the problem.
Jail's one of the
And-
biggest problems.
And, you know, we, the citizens of Salt Lake, said we didn't want a really reasonable $500 million jail that included rehabilitation. So shame on us.
I don't think that was sold to people very well.
Nobody even knew it was
Yeah.
happening. So shame on us for that. But I will say the response from the city from a verbal point of view was phenomenal and really to be praised. But if we continue to judge our leaders by what they say and not what they do, we will continue to have chronic problems.
I want to give Mayor Mendenhall credit for a minute right now, because she really has taken this seriously. She has moved lightning speed to dive in, understand exactly what the problems are, and not
She's
just.
5 years into her
I
administration.
know. Hey,
What
look,
slow?
you can
what
give-
does slow look like?
You can give, there's a lot of criticism to be placed before. I'm fine, that's fair. But over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Since she's
almost,
been given the ultimatum.
she has moved mountains
The
to get to where she
opportunity
is.
to collaborate.
And she's and it's a great opportunity.
It's a tremendous opportunity to
It does.
collaborate.
If we work together collaboratively, we're going to get the best outcome, and that's what I'm most excited about. But she has been tirelessly working with all the stakeholders to help get to this point. Now, it's got there's a lot of refining that needs to be done, and I'm not even saying I agree with the plan completely, because I don't. But we're having conversations, we're having we're headed in the right direction.
Is the
and-
homeless service board included in this
Yes,
conversation?
they will be
Is
included.
that their name? I might be
Yeah,
getting them.
I don't know, but yes. I
Randy
think it's right.
Shumway's
Randy
group
Shumway,
involved?
yes. They will be super involved in this moving
And the
forward.
sheriff and the county.
They
and
have to be.
Yeah.
And Sim Gill's office, who's not
Yeah, what do you-
prosecuting these criminals. That's the problem, one of the problems. Anyways, you have to prosecute. You have to prosecute. If you don't prosecute, there's no consequences.
That is
And the
so
people
true.
live out, or end up
Because
right back
when
on the
you
street.
prosecute with people who don't have the means, misdemeanors, which isn't actually the responsibility of the Sim Gills, because all these are misdemeanors, not criminal
That's
charges.
because they're
So
getting
they
flagged
fall
down by
beyond their
the-
jurisdiction.
yeah.
And if you don't prosecute people who don't have the means to pay, and that way they can't be more in a bind and in a cycle that leads to not having the services they need, then where are you? That's what I say.
Lightning round. Are you going to be talking election reform in this upcoming session? I hear a lot of rumors.
There will be a lot of election bills, and there will be a lot of discussion around elections going forward, yes.
I'm passionate about election reform. Bramble brokered SB 54 10 years ago.
And now he's gone.
Bramble's gone, so it'll be interesting to see. I hope the grown-ups show up on election reform. Ray Ward's bill to reduce, just for the record, when I asked Ray Ward how he chose the signature gathering threshold, he said he took a national average. That seemed pretty reasonable.
Well, that shows just the complex of the debate. You have one side, like Ray Ward and others, that say it needs to be easier to get on the ballots, and then you have the other side, like the repeal SB 54 side, that says everything should go through the caucus and convention system. So it'll be an interesting debate as we move forward. I think there's going to be broader debate around elections in general, besides just how do you get on the ballot.
Okay, K through 12, are there any
K through 12,
big
yeah.
changes expected?
You know what? Here's
And
the
just so
thing
you
I'm
know,
really
you're
excited
on the
about.
line here because your handler here is
Jackson.
watching us.
He's giving us the
Yes.
stink eye.
Giving us the stink eye.
Listen, here's the thing. career technical education, CTE classes. I feel like my generation was the last generation where there was a real emphasis put on CTE in our K through 12 programs. And there has been some districts have done better than others, but our industry is begging for it, our society is begging for more CTE, and our students are begging for it. We, on K through 12, and more specifically in our high schools, we're going to create programs that allow for more career technical education to take place, to educate those kids sooner while they're in high school, and programs that also help them develop skills beyond just the technical part, right? Like your skills like how to get a job done on time, how to show up to work on time, giving them responsibilities inside that through projects that help them learn. These are things that we're going to be working on this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
Good hands-on things.
I agree.
Do you have any goals for the speaker while he's here that you'd like him to know about, that you'd like to
Bet
put
you
him
want
on?
to know
Yes.
since, last time we were here,
so
you
well.
let,
Yeah.
A lot of people were upset about your last bet. There was so much, like, Twitter. People go crazy. X, whatever you call it now. I know.
We're just having
It
fun.
was a-
I'm sorry you were abused with that
It
hat.
was a
Yeah.
hard day for me.
Did it go okay, or did it make it a really long day after that?
It was a long day because, I don't want you to atta-girl me with a MAGA hat on, and I don't want you to be disgusted with me. Either way, I lose, right? One of the worst was, because I spent the rest of the day at the Capitol. Some of the worst stuff was people who didn't think it was weird. They were like, "Hey, good to see you, Maura." I'm like, "No,
This is not
do not
normal."
think this is who I am. I had to do a lot of soul searching after that.
So you felt like you needed a
I
sign to
was
explain
glad
it?
it was her, not me.
I know.
I know. I was looking forward to the first day of the legislative session with your White Guys for Hair shirt on. So, yeah.
That would have been bad.
No, I think it's a strong, hard 45 days. I will give, this is the political dish that's going on. So for those of you in the know, which everyone on our podcast is, this is sort of Mike Schultz's first term as speaker. His last year,
With the warm-up?
His last year, in their language, finished out Brad Wilson's term. So you get elected to be speaker. Our legislative sessions are kind of considered 2-year sessions. And so if you're sort of watching, that was Mike agreeing to finish Brad Wilson's. And in many ways, I don't want to obviously speak for him, but I think that was Mike's point of view too. That's everyone's point of view, is you're sort of honoring the person who started that. So this is properly Speaker Schultz's first 2-year session.
Buckle up.
There's a new sheriff in town.
Buckle up, here we go.
All right, this is going to be exciting to watch. Glad you made some time for us. To our longtime listeners, if you've been missing Greg Hughes and his spiciness, he will be returning to the podcast. And Speaker Schultz has agreed when he's not so busy with the legislative session to keep hanging out with us as well. So,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, thanks for coming in. Thanks for not throwing punches, either of you. And we will be back next week.
Did you? I didn't
That's fun.
respond to him. Did you see